Part 47. Global Copy, My Talent is Called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 461. Oh, Luzioki's eyelids twitched. You old man has no moral ethics. He pressed the music, looked at the troops bowing and setting arrows below, and said to himself expressionlessly, "Then don't blame me for being cruel. Why are you still standing there? Fire the arrow. Fire the arrow." Following Chen Yaoliang's order, the army obeyed the command and fired arrows at the city wall in unison. Buzz, the rain of arrows was like black clouds pressing over the city, overwhelmingly shooting toward the top of Nanchang City. Most of the arrows actually lost their strength while they were still in mid-air and began to fall in a parabola. In fact, in this era, anyone who can shoot an arrow from the ground to a high wall from a few hundred meters away can be considered a marksman. If you want to hit the enemy, you must rely on firepower to cover it. Facing the rain of arrows coming towards her face, Luzioki didn't even bother to raise her eyelids. She just said helplessly, "Hey. I saw it all, he was the one who made the move first. You really can't blame me for this." As soon as he finished speaking, the powerful piano music sounded again. However, this time the music is no longer the same tune as before. It has been replaced by the super flammable and super explosive nuclear explosion song Alice. It is recommended to listen to the Guhan version. It is simply explosive. A few more words here. There are currently two versions that are approved by Xiaopoja. They do not contain any casual elements. The first version has a very nice intro, with the keyword fingerstyle Guhan, Alice at station B, and the other one is the chorus part is quite explosive. Keywords are nuclear explosion Guhan, Alice. Those who are interested can go search and watch it by themselves, but I actually prefer to combine the two versions. Moreover, as soon as Luzioki raised her hand, she immediately became Wangjia. Love same crier caress save liar. Luzioki was seen playing continuously with both hands, with his left hand continuously plucking the strings and his right hand continuously strumming the strings. Endless sound waves spread to the battlefield almost instantly. Amidst this exciting music, no one noticed that all the arrows they had shot were deflected by an invisible force, and not a single arrow could land on Luzioki. No, to be precise, no arrow can break within 3 feet of Luzioki. Instead, the exploding sound field instantly ignited the already depressing and tense atmosphere on the battlefield. Almost as soon as the music started, the eyes of all the soldiers on the field turned red. They were trembling all over and seemed to be in a completely uncontrollable state. They all pulled out their weapons and started slashing around wildly. Everyone is like a berserker going on a rampage, and his parents don't recognize him. Camp roar. Chen Yaoliang's brain was suddenly confused. He never expected that his hundreds of thousands of strong troops would just listen to one person and one song from the other side. It exploded immediately. It was another counselor who noticed that Luzioki was still playing the gukan on the city wall intact. A chill ran down his spine. He pointed at him with trembling fingers and screamed at the top of his lungs. "Witchcraft! This is sorcery! This is a monster!" Luzioki is dressed in white as snow, with his head slightly lowered so that his expression cannot be seen, but if you stand next to him, you can clearly see the slightly twitching corners of his mouth. Obviously, he dressed so handsomely, had such a stylish look, and appeared so domineering that he was still regarded as a demon. This made him very dissatisfied. So he flicked his finger, and the next moment, the counselor fell to the ground silently, completely losing the breath of life. It was this moment that confirmed his identity as a demon. Even Chen Yaoliang, who pretended to be calm, changed his face drastically. He quickly grabbed the attendants on the left and right and shouted, "Escort! Escort!" Joke. The counselor was hundreds of meters away from Luzioki, and he died so silently. This shows that he is really capable of taking his head. And so far, the methods Luzioki has shown are too weird, making people think of ghosts and gods. In fact, it is indeed an extraordinary method. It's amazing that Chen Yaoliang didn't panic. In the midst of the panic, Chen Yaoliang's soldier holding the flag was cut down to the ground by someone unknown. The next moment, the big flag with the word Chen written on it fell to the ground. Now that the backbone has been lost, even those who were still conscious are trapped in this quagmire and unable to struggle out. Hundreds of thousands of troops were like this under the city of Nanchang, killing their own people, until rivers of blood flowed, and their broken arms flew around. A heartbroken song, where can I find a close friend at the end of the world? Lu Xiaoqi stood on the wall with her hands behind her back, with a lonely posture like a master is lonely. The autumn wind rustled, fluttering the corners of his clothes, making him look even more handsome after recuperating during this period. He didn't play the song Alice for long, only less than 4 minutes. Without the blessing of the sound of the piano music, the frenzied effect on the scene naturally plummeted, and many people woke up from it. But the fighting on the field lasted for 2 full hours. The reason is also very simple. Because no one knows whether the person in front of them is sane or crazy. If you look at him one more time and he pulls out his knife and chops you to the ground, who are you going to talk to? Therefore, even if they have gradually woken up and their consciousness has returned to normal, in this situation, they can only continue to fight with the people around them to ensure their own safety. Isn't there such a saying? Real protection is to kill all enemies. Only when everyone around you falls down can your own safety be guaranteed. By the end of the fight, almost everyone on the field was exhausted. Of Chen Yaoliang's 600,000 strong army, only a few 100,000 remnants were left and fled in defeat. But they didn't escape far. They happened to run into Zhu Yuanzhang's troops, who came to clean up the troops according to Lu Xiaoqi's instructions. Although Lao Zhu still only has 80,000 troops in his hands at this moment, the opponent still has a team of hundreds of thousands left. But the status of the two is completely different. Zhu Yuanzhang's side was well rested and in perfect condition, Chen Yaoliang's side was in chaos, frightened and exhausted, and many people were injured. Even if Zhu Yuanzhang used less to defeat more, he was still unstoppable. It was a completely one-sided situation. Not to mention Zhu Yuanzhang and the secret methods Lu Xiaoqi left for him. Black powder. Speaking of this stuff, friends who often read historical texts must be familiar with it. Anyway, if you travel through ancient times, if you don't come up with this thing, it will be embarrassing if you talk about it. In fact, this thing had already appeared in the Tang dynasty, and was just a byproduct of alchemy by some alchemists who attempted to cultivate immortality. And because of the proportion of each material, it did not show amazing power. It was not until the Ming dynasty that guns filled with black powder and fired bullets gradually appeared, which were the prototype of guns. Lu Xiaoqi just used her photographic memory to slightly advance what should appear. And what he took out was naturally not such low-level black powder. Go straight to the intensity. If we want to play, let's play in a big way. Dynamite. It was arranged immediately. In fact, it's not like he hasn't thought about it. Now that he's taken action, he might as well equip Lao Zhu with a gun. However, the level of craftsmanship in this era is not strong and the production capacity is limited. Not to mention precision machined parts, even the barrel is laborious. So everything was kept simple. Lu Xiaoqi only got a simple version of the pistol for Zhu Yuanzhang to defend himself. What can really determine the outcome of the battle is the explosive pack that can break mountains and create rocks. Of course, using the current popular language, this thing should be called Hang Tianlei. After igniting it and throwing it out, it will be like a thunderous thunder, which will directly blow people to pieces. Isn't it just a thunder? This method obviously also stunned Chen Yaoliang's remaining troops. Where have they ever seen such a scene? Pure technology crushes him. Some people even regarded it as a magical means to summon thunder, and were so frightened that they knelt down and kowtowed to Zhu Yuanzhang's team. Many people even firmly believe that the army led by Zhu Yuanzhang must be the so-called heavenly soldiers. Can call wind, rain, thunder, and lightning. Lu Xiaoqi's terrifying performance before and this thunder just confirmed this point of view. How can humans fight against the sky? Therefore, almost instantly, Chen Yaoliang's troops completely lost their fighting spirit and surrendered one after another. Morale -999. Chen Yaoliang still wanted to take advantage of the chaos and escape like before. As a result, Su De, who was chasing after him on horseback, beheaded him with a knife and died on the spot. This ended all his scenes in the book and was successfully completed. I'm going to say something too much at the end. If you think I have too many narrations, I'll just say one thing: the parentheses don't count as the main text, it's enough. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 462. Lu Xiaoqi defeated Chen Yaoliang's 600,000 troops by himself, while Zhu Yuanzhang defeated the enemy's more than 100,000 remnant troops who fled. It happened to echo what Lu Xiaoqi said when he was teasing Zhu Yuanzhang before. Of course, the unlucky Chen Yaoliang Fang is the one who bears the price for their momentary joke. Many people lost their lives in vain at the foot of Nanchang City and died at the hands of one of their own before they even understood the situation. And even if they survive by chance, the white clothes standing on the city wall will be a nightmare that will never be erased from their hearts. The name Devil in White will resound throughout this ancient continent. Oh, it is worth mentioning that apart from those who survived the battle with Zhu Yuanzhang and surrendered, there are still a small number of people who are still comatose in Nanchang City. This is the vanguard force that entered the city before. Lu Xiaoqi did not kill them all, but just used a little trick to make them lost in the illusion. Of course, to the outside world, especially to Zhu Yuanzhang, Lu Xiaoqi claimed that he only used the necessary medicine for killing people when traveling at home, lose smoke. As for how Lu Xiaoqi defeated Chen Yaoliang's 600,000 strong army, Lu Xiaoqi said that she was also innocent. The Lun family stayed well on the top of the city, playing the guqin and singing. Who knows why they were so angry? And you put the responsibility on me. It's like people are sitting on the top of the city, and pots are coming from the sky. Zhu Yuanzhang, I really believe in your evil deeds. But no matter what, no one will doubt Lu's shocking methods now. At this point, Chen Yaoliang's surprise attack, which was supposed to be a great battle recorded in history, was completely reduced to Lu Xiaoqi's personal show, and became a step in his battle with a certain big devil. But this is over. However, Lu Xiaoqi went to an isolated mountain alone with a cautious look, stood on the top of the mountain, and quietly waited for what would happen next. Lu Xiaoqi had guessed it before. This small evolving world should be like a world in a book. Although everything inside is real, everyone's fate has been doomed from the beginning. Everything has been decided at the beginning of the story. Although the people in the book are different from each other, they all have their own joys, sorrows, and joys. But their actions will definitely be influenced by the person who writes the story, and then guides this huge world to develop according to the original script. Until the end of the story. In this process, there must be a role that plays a vital role. That is the will of heaven and earth this time. It will be responsible for bringing everything on track and unfolding the plot in the established direction. At first, Lu Xiaoqi thought that Moluo was the will of heaven and earth. But later he discovered that maybe he didn't have the power to disrupt the world so thoroughly. At most, he has the ability to influence the will of heaven and earth. Otherwise, if he was really the will of heaven and earth, Lu Xiaoqi would have enjoyed the treatment of being targeted by one world. Inserting a topic here, I actually planned to write it like this at first, so that Lu Xiaoqi would go crazy and be targeted by the will of heaven and earth, and then die constantly to gain passive abilities, but the audience was too clever, so I only wrote a hint. This bunch of handsome guys noticed it. But who am I, Humph, what Zyapushi likes to do most is to say no, to those handsome guys who think they are smart, so I decisively deleted the original plan and adopted Plan B. Based on this, Luzaoki has room for maneuver. But first, he had to do something. That was to test what kind of attitude Fang Tiandi had towards him. After all, when he first came here, this guy had a lot of pants on him. And if he does something under someone's nose, then he shouldn't be pinched to death? That's why this incident happened. And it was not Lu Zioqi who started the incident. Chen Yaoliang would launch a general attack on Zhu Yuanzhang in advance, which was obviously influenced by a certain devil. Otherwise, according to the normal development process, Lao Zhu still has at least 5 years of development time, and he can slowly stack Q. Later, when Liashan pretends to be fake, he can fight with Chen Yaoliang. But regarding the behavior of a certain demon, the attitude of the will of heaven and earth is very ambiguous. Anyway, if we really want to investigate, Mo Luo is the one who is rebellious, while he, Lu, is trying his best to break up the chaos. It didn't even bother to correct it. That's why he became unscrupulous. Then Lu Zioqi is so proud. There are many truths in this world. You can only commit a thief for 1,000 days. How can you guard against a thief for 1,000 days? The cause today will be the result tomorrow. The so-called cause and effect. After a great battle, the only person who really died at the hands of Lu Zioqi was that poor strategist who trouble comes from his mouth. In this way, Lu Zioqi will naturally suffer karma. However, for the sake of caution, he did not use his extraordinary power to directly intervene at first. This is equivalent to Lu Zioqi's original restrictions being lifted. Instead, he actually used strategies and used black powder, a thing that already existed in this world. And the reason why Lu Zioqi did this was. But since he is in this world, it is inevitable to have karma. In the beginning, he did really well. Even when he was with Zhu Yuanzhang, the protagonist who was obviously the son of destiny, he was almost untroubled by his karma. Just to avoid the karma of this world. He wanted to see if the will of heaven and earth was still in charge. Just like a seed you plant, it will bear fruit one day after you water it carefully. Now, let's see who suffers more. Just for one thing. It means cause and result. And what Lu Zioqi did was to reduce this karma as much as possible. Drag Mara into the water with you. Even so, he did not kill anyone and directly completed the super god. But Mara finally took action against him. Until Chen Yaoliang took action against Lu Zioqi without permission. So good causes and get good results, so evil causes and get bad results. So Lu Zioqi simply made a big deal out of this matter. In other words, it tried to correct it, but it didn't work. All these developments are in line with the laws of the world, and will naturally not cause rejection by the will of heaven and earth. Instead, similar methods were used to interfere with the opponent's consciousness, causing them to kill each other and become chaotic. Now that everyone has taken action, you can't stop me from fighting back, right? They all broke the rules. At this time, whether it was a demon who borrowed a knife to kill someone, or it was just his own head convulsion. What Lu Zioqi did obviously interfered with the normal development of the situation, as if he forcibly cut off the cause and effect of others, causing the other party's good causes to not get good results and evil causes to not get evil consequences. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 463. A dad who lives in San Francisco once said, "Beat magic with magic." Obviously, this is what Lu Zioqi did. Similar to fighting fire with fire. Since you took action with the help of the will of heaven and earth, I will use your plan to give you a big backhand. The ending is also obvious. that is, the will of heaven and earth is finally angry. In an instant, there was lightning and thunder, the earth shook, flash floods occurred, and lava spewed. Lu has almost completely experienced all the wrath of nature. But Mr. Lu surprisingly did not resist. Not only did he not resist, but he actually enjoyed it. Because every act of the will of heaven and earth will wash away part of the karma entangled between him and this world. This, on the contrary, is helping him to detach. The exaggerated power of the catastrophe naturally caused nearby creatures to tremble, and rumors of world destruction began to spread in many places. This made Zhu Yuanzhang, who had just won the battle, gained new territory, and was developing vigorously, so worried that he almost lost his hair. As his power expanded, so did his ambitions. He now has vague thoughts of the 9th master. But this disaster happened too suddenly, and its power was exaggerated to the extreme. This is equivalent to the ancient times when primitive people saw the explosion of the atomic bomb. They couldn't understand this phenomenon. The only way they could explain it was that the gods were angry. With such terrifying power, could it be that the gods are going to send down punishment to destroy the world? Of course, this understanding is actually correct in a sense, but it is not to destroy the world, but to eliminate heretics. But how can ordinary people understand this? They only see the surface and start making wild guesses based on these imaginations. Suddenly, rumors spread, and the world was terrified. This is not a good thing, because in this extremely panic environment, social security will be greatly affected. After all, it's the end of the world, so who is still following the rules with you? Others didn't know it clearly, but Zhu Yuanzhang knew what was going on. After all, it was impossible for him not to pay attention to Lu Xiaoqi's whereabouts. Of course, he didn't know the specific situation. He only knew that the current vision must be related to this gentleman. He was extremely in awe of Lu Xiaoqi's abilities. The only thing he could do was send someone to block the news, and then secretly prayed to Mr. to settle this matter quickly. Otherwise, the trouble will be really big. After all, this blockade of news is only a temporary matter, and there is no impermeable wall in the world. Fortunately, this terrifying vision of heaven and earth did not last long. 2 days and 1 night passed, and the will of heaven and earth suddenly stopped, indicating that the work was over. At this time, Lu Xiaoqi was directly exempted from all fatal effects caused by natural disasters. At the same time, his soul was refined by the will of heaven and earth and became extremely clear. It's almost to the point of feeling like a fairy. Even his cultivation level has improved by leaps and bounds. He jumped from the mediocre Qi training realm to breaking through 2 major levels and entering the Yuan Shen stage again. The will of heaven and earth is not so much revenge on Lu Xiaoqi as it is fulfilling him. Why do you say that? Because the moment Lu Xiaoqi returned to the realm of Yuan Shen, earth-shaking changes have taken place in this world. Lu Xiaoqi clearly felt that the surrounding space had reached a very unstable state. It's like a person eating something he can't bear, and then his stomach starts to churn, a prelude to the normal vomiting reaction. Then, at the next moment, a huge crack appeared in the sky, and almost everyone in the world could clearly see the scene. Small world, I am torn apart. It's over, it's over. The sky is cracking. Countless mortals panicked and shouted, almost thinking that they were about to die with the world. As for Lu Xiaoqi, she was almost in rapport with nature. He immediately knew it was time. Therefore, Lu Xiaoqi did not resist the huge suction force exerted on herself by this crack, but instead accelerated herself into it. Moreover, as he got closer to the crack, his body became larger and larger. In the end, his body almost filled the entire crack. The land version of Nuwa mending the sky. Old Ma, come out and see God. Zhu Yuanzhang was stunned. He pulled his wife Ma Dejiao, pointed at the familiar figure in the sky and resolutely blocked the gap in the sky. The next moment, Luzioki's body began to disappear, and the huge crack between heaven and earth began to slowly disappear. It looks like a great god saw the crack in the sky and was willing to use his body to fill the crack. Somehow, Zhu Yuanzhang actually felt like his eyes were filled with tears. "Gentlemen." He repeated the sentence in his mind and secretly clenched his fists. "When I, Mr. Zhu, come to power, I must build a temple for my husband and build a golden body." However, the essence of all this is that Luzioki saw that his body was stuck in the gap, so he decisively abandoned the incomplete body and successfully escaped from this small world. Anyway, this body originally belonged to this world, and Luzioki was just returning it to it now. But Zhu Yuanzhang doesn't know, and neither do the creatures in this world. In their view, there was a benevolent God who was willing to die when the world was about to be destroyed and saved the world with his own life. But Zhu Yuanzhang thought more. He felt that Luzioki should be that kind of immortal with great supernatural powers. However, because he secretly helped him, he was punished by God, and then accidentally destroyed the world during the tribulation, and finally gave up his own life to save the world. To put it bluntly, he is the culprit. Therefore, Zhu Yuanzhang felt guilty in his heart. Of course, from his perspective, this understanding is correct. But he would never know. In fact, this is actually a game between Luo and Luzioki, a competition between each other. It's just that because Luo had the home field advantage, he didn't take Luzioki seriously at all. As a result, he didn't expect Luzioki's behavior to be so unrestrained and wild, and he couldn't bear to do it directly to the chessboard. He immediately said that if you want to fight, it's okay, go out and fight. Don't take me with you. I won't play with you anymore. Then with a U sound, Luzioki, who had swallowed it in, vomited it out again. Well, that's probably it. Today is National Day, happy holiday everyone. Today's update will be a little later because Xiao Puja is playing outside. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 464. When Luzioki's soul returned to its original form and his own power emerged again, he was shocked to discover something. It turns out that he was not sent to one small thousand worlds by Mara for rotation, but 3,000. Sumeru's magical power, instant eternity. The moment he was struck, Mara forcibly divided his soul into countless parts, and each part was thrown into a brand new small world derived from it. Originally, Luo's plan was to use the small world to divide Luzioki's soul, destroy his will, and let him completely fall into the small world. As for why it does this, the reason is very simple. Actually, it's because it covets what Luzioki has. The power that comes from the origin of the world in this world. However, due to Luzioki's own special characteristics, even when his soul was divided into thousands of parts, he still maintained his sanity and memory and did not die. Then Luzioki, with her own passive abilities and memories, entered the various small worlds evolved by Luo. Some of these worlds are set in modern society, but there are silicon-based creatures that can turn into cars, chatty boys who like to fly around in tight clothes and swings, or rich playboys who like to urinate in steel suits. Or in the ancient social background, there are the great heroes who serve the country and the people, the stinky man with 4 eyebrows, and the unparalleled heroes who guard the mountains and rivers by themselves. There are even many fantasy and magical worlds, such as the Will-o'-the-Wisp boy from 30 Years of Hexi and 30 Years from Hedong, the magical boy who gnaws a giant melon in Wakanda, and the yodel boy who likes to steal rings. Crossed out, it's actually the Hobbit, people. Naturally, the background of the future world is indispensable, such as the biochemical world where zombies are rampant at the end of the world, the end world where robots rule the world, the imperial world where human flesh batteries. There are even many special photography worlds, such as Eva, Giant of Light, Ring Typing, etc. Of course, in addition to these, there will inevitably be weird worlds that make people want to urinate, such as Sister Chu, Sister Zhen, Jiaran's wife. I have to mention that this really made Lu Xiaoqi, who had recovered and had her memories fused, a bit unbearable. It's so exciting. Seeing this, I believe everyone has discovered one thing. Although these worlds are all derived from the small thousand worlds divided by Mo, each of them is a world that Lu Xiaoqi is familiar with. And they are all low and mid-range worlds, and there is no such thing as cultivating immortals, prehistoric times, or the kind of high-end games that reshape the world at the slightest disagreement. The reason for this is also very simple. Because this Mara statue obviously does not have the ability to create a new world completely independently, even if it imitates it, it does not dare to imitate the small world beyond its own control. The worlds he created actually drew on a lot of things, and even relied on some of Lu Xiaoqi's own causal powers. To put it bluntly, it is a creation based on what Lu Xiaoqi saw and heard. Be more clear. It's just that the script was actually brought by someone from Lu, and Mo just took it and filmed it. Even in order to restore the classics, I dare not modify any of the details, for fear that if I make the wrong correction, the whole world will collapse. People who were originally pulled into the Xiaoqian world by him will lose the plot advantage of foresight because their souls are divided, and their memories are reduced and sealed. Moreover, because only the souls are pulled into the Xiaoqian world, their own strength and realm will be different. Will not be brought in. But then again, how terrifying must this be? But Lu Xiaoqi actually practiced again 3,000 times. In terms of his ability to make trouble, how could Mo be the opponent of someone like Lu who was familiar with the plot? When he used this trick, it felt like he was giving Lu Xiaoqi a vacation, allowing him to watch live-action performances immersively. So, he started making trouble. It's a pity that if he is allowed to act like a devil, he will inevitably drink someone Lu's foot washing water. Coupled with the will of the small world, Lu Xiaoqi's distraction from recultivation was sent to the Yuanshen stage. Lu Xiaoqi's completely unreasonable passive ability directly wiped out all of Mo advantages. This wave is simply a flying dragon riding on the face. How can this work? For example, the superimposed death avoidance characteristics of 100 deaths are unexplained, and the various sword skills mastered by extreme swordsmanship. The only difference is Lu Xiaoqi's own crazy increase in mana and attributes. In this small world, even if thousands of years have passed, due to the blessing of great magic power and great supernatural powers, the outside world has only passed for a moment. So no matter how you look at it, the opponent is a sure winner. His purpose was to make Lu Xiaoqi die in this small thousand world, and then he would use the power of reincarnation in the small thousand world to absorb the original power of Lu. This is equivalent to Lu Xiaoqi having the superimposed mana of 3,000 Yuanshen stages. So when Lu Xiaoqi's various souls returned, all the memories were integrated, and when he opened his eyes again, the scene outside had not changed in any way from before. Lu Xiaoqi is in this small world, so you can imagine how many passives she has stacked up. The time span can even be as long as a century. Joke. On the other hand, Mara himself can collaborate with the will of the world. This foundation cannot be more solid. Before, Lu Xiaoqi was divided into 3,000 and thrown into different worlds for cultivation. And every time he spends more than one day in Xiaoqian world, his passive ability Extreme Intent of Power will be activated once. In short, after Mo threw his R skill with a killing effect, Zuyan fell to the ground and could not get up again, but Lu Xiaoqi's strength increased greatly, and her combat power directly broke through the sky. Not only did he retain his memory, but he also possessed the method of cultivation and a heaven-defying passive ability. No matter which world he went to, he would prosper. In other words, if he has 3,000 distractions living in the small thousand world at the same time for a day, he can superimpose the extreme intent of power 3,000 times at once. What's more, the flow rate of each small thousand worlds is different. Some small thousand worlds stories are based on months, but some are based on years. Not to mention the various abilities brought back by his other passives. Even the spring water didn't come out. She was pressed to the ground and rubbed in fancy ways. Although this power has a somewhat promoting meaning in it. 3,000 distractions reunited into one. This time Emoludo was dumbfounded. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 465. Hey, then the problem comes. As we all know, energy in this world is conserved. Although Zuyan was knocked to the ground, he was obviously not dead and the battle was not reduced. As for Lu Zioki, after taking a big move, his strength improved greatly. So who is secretly losing money behind this? The answer is obviously no doubt. That is the image of Mara. First of all, it obviously paid a high price to support this ultimate move. If it was allowed to successfully swallow up the original power of Lu Zioki, it would obviously not be a loss. It's a pity that he obviously stole the chicken and lost the rice. Secondly, he evolved so many small worlds and battled with Lu Zioki in them. As a result, there was too much movement, and the will of heaven and earth could not bear it and stopped, and Lu Zioki was kicked out. Lu Zioki was struck by 5 thunderbolts from the sky and faced various disasters. So as the instigator, what will be the fate of Mara? The answer is obvious. Also withstood the backlash of the will of heaven and earth in these small worlds. The difference from Lu Zioki is that Lu Zioki had 3,000 gods to bear the wrath of the will of heaven and earth, while Mara had only one Buddha statue to accept them all. Sanctions from the will of the small world of heaven and earth times 3,000. The last and most important point. As the derivative founder of the small world, it could use the small world to assimilate and absorb Lu Zioki, although it failed. So on the other hand, where did the benefits Lu Zioki gained from practicing in this small world come from? That's right. All come from Mara. Therefore, Lu Zioki got the spiritual cultivation level times 3,000. Mara lost 3,000 points of spiritual cultivation. 3 strikes, each one more deadly than the last. This is equivalent to the idiot Mara who thought someone else had a good idea, then plagiarized other people's ideas, took out a loan to make a movie at any cost, and poached other people's original ideas to work for him. As a result, the movie turned out to be a mess, and it was so bad at the box office that it was impossible to watch it. It was even sued for plagiarism and copyright infringement by original creators. In the end, not only did he repay the loan, he was also involved in lawsuits, and his reputation also plummeted. The most important thing is that Renchuang took advantage of this momentum and took off. It's true that I became a joker. I just ask you if you are angry and that's it. Isn't this nonsense? I must be angry. Mara is almost furious. Please note that this is not an adjective. It is really going to be angry to death immediately. I saw smoke coming out of its 7 orifices, and its whole body was constantly exuding demonic energy like black smoke, and irregular crack marks appeared all over its body. Although it was suppressed by him with great magic power within a short time after it reappeared. But there are always things that cannot be taken into consideration. No, there was a huge gap on its face. Before the gap could be healed and disappeared by its magical power, the place where Zuyan had hit it with a few sticks fell down with a snap. The whole scene looked weird, gloomy, terrifying and, yet hilarious at the same time. Imagine a horror doll taking 2 steps, and then suddenly its nose or ears suddenly fall to the ground. So Lu Zioki couldn't hold it back and burst out laughing. You can't blame him. You know, Lu Zioki has received professional training in suppressing laughter. No matter how funny something is, he will never laugh out loud. Unless you can't help it. Ahem, okay, Lu Zioki did laugh. But don't get me wrong. He wasn't laughing just because he thought it was funny. He is just gloating without quality. Hearing Luzaoki's laughter, Amoloto turned around suddenly, with a pair of terrifying demon eyes staring at the culprit who caused it to become what it is now. Then, Luzaoki laughed even louder. Ha ha ha. He almost hugged his belly and bent over with a smile. He was almost as good as kneeling on the ground and beating the floor. Because Amoloto's seemingly powerful turned back, he probably used too much force, and he just threw one of his ears out. Then its terrifying eyes, the left eyeball and the right eyeball seemed to have problems focusing. One of them stared straight at Luzaoki, while the other one pointed toward the sky with a very distinctive look. Good guy. Everyone else has the Sharingan, but you have turned into a strabismus. Thinking of this, Luzaoki laughed even louder. Lu's gesture obviously angered the Mara Buddha statue. Except for the swastika on his chest, Mara, who was just like Buddha, finally revealed his ferocious and terrifying side. I saw it suddenly opened its mouth wide, revealing its astonishing fangs, and dozens of terrifying and slender arms sprouted from its back. It took huge steps and rushed straight towards Luzaoki with bang and bang. As it moved, its body was still cracked, and things kept falling from its body. When the golden statue on the surface fell off, the body of the horse was actually squirming like flesh. This disgusting look, as if the skin had been peeled off and only the muscle tissue was left, really made Luzaoki restrain himself. Because looking at this thing, he really couldn't laugh out loud. In order to prevent this thing from contaminating his eyeballs anymore, Luzaoki decided. Close your eyes first. Yes. Facing the body of Amoloto that was rushing towards him almost instantly, Luzaoki actually slowly closed his eyes at this critical moment. Is he showing off his brain? Amoloto doesn't care what Luzaoki is pretending to be, or how cool you are. It directly stretched out dozens of hands, and with one hand, it produced the effect of Ula Ola Ola. If it really hits, just this one blow can beat Luzaoki into a bun. I don't know how Luzaoki's 100 deaths unexplained can be exempted from this weird method of death. However, the next second it was about to hit Luzaoki. A peerless blade that can cut off everything slowly rises from Luzaoki's body. No, that's not right. To be precise, Luzaoki instantly transformed into a peerless blade that could cut off everything. And all of Amoloto's attacks hit the sword blade that contained boundless edge. Next moment, the miserable howl that resounded throughout the world echoed here. The sky-shattering blood sprayed out in a steady stream. Countless broken limbs were peeled off from Mora's body. Make it look scary and pitiful. In fact, most of these injuries were not caused by Luzaoki. After all, he just transformed into a sword and stood quietly on the spot. Naturally, it was all done by Mara himself. But it's the right thing to do. Not for self-abuse, but for self-help. The moment it came into contact with the sword embodied by Luzaoki, a terrifying sword intent that could completely destroy it was poured directly into its body, defeating all the monstrous demonic energy contained in its body. To die. To die. To die. Its few sanity is frantically pinging signals to it. The next chapter will be posted later. People are mesmerized by the colorful world outside. I love you. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 466. There is great terror between life and death. Prompted by the instinct of survival, Amoloto decisively gave up his bloated body and abandoned all the parts of his body that were infected by the sword's wool. Survive with a broken arm. Its approach is very wise, but unfortunately, it is too slow. Relative to the speed at which it cuts off its own flesh and blood. Luzaoki's sword intention is obviously faster. Even though he had done the most correct method, he still couldn't escape Luzaoki's fierce sword intent in the end. It has to be said that Luzaoki has indeed achieved terrifying growth after cultivating in 3,000 small worlds. Let's put it that way. For Luzaoki, he used to use swords purely because his passive abilities, skills, and equipment were from the sword series. In addition, he himself thinks the sword is more handsome. But do you have any specific understanding of swords? This can only be said that there can be some, but not many. But after he traveled around many small worlds, he not only saw various top swordsmen, but also realized the exquisite and profound realm of swordsmanship. So, he finally started to grow. Not only that, except for swordsmanship, he has also grown in other aspects. After all, in the small world, except for Luzaoki's passive abilities, everything else is restricted. It's just a world of pure ordinary people like the Ming dynasty, where one can directly use one force to bring down the 10 wisdoms. If you encounter the kind of martial arts world where two parties meet to pose, and a round determines life and death, or if you encounter the famous scene where you can encounter several superheroes fighting while walking on the road, Luzaoki's body is leaning over the body of ordinary people. The small body is not enough. Therefore, he is forced to take the initiative to master and develop his own abilities so that he can exert greater effects. The results developed by one distraction may be insignificant, but 3,000 distractions, working day and night, have stayed in the small world for several years or decades. What is accumulated over and over cannot be simply described as terrifying. That must be so terrifying. And this kind of growth cannot be expressed by simple numerical values. Just like the reason why people cannot be replaced by machines is not because of how strong, smart, or excellent their computing power is, it is because of the flash of ideas that robots cannot imitate. This kind of creativity brought about by a sudden burst of inspiration is something that robots will never be able to possess. The same goes for Luzaoki. Even if his numerical value does not change. But something changed inside him. He truly knows how to use his power. Coupled with his already terrifying abilities, the effect produced was like the energy bursting out from nuclear fusion, completely beyond Moro's imagination. This big devil never expected that Luzaoki, who had almost no room to resist his attacks, would suddenly change his body after enduring a wave of experience pack supplies from him, and directly awaken to block and kill. The posture of the god of war in which the Buddha blocks and kills the Buddha. But no matter how hard he thought about it, it couldn't change the fact. There is no place where people can die, it is so afraid of death. That's it, dying soon. As he spoke, he stared at one of the cypress trees. The sword on his body was silent, and the threat was self-evident. The good news is that it is not dead, and because of Mara's death, the original traces of demonization on its body have completely disintegrated. In fact, ever since Luzaoki learned that this place was an endless hell, he had been vaguely aware that something was wrong. The bad news is that this guy seems to have fallen into a state of recuperation because his soul was severely injured by Mara. He doesn't know how long he will have to sleep before he wakes up. It can only mean one thing, it must be plotting against Luzaoki. But there was no movement behind him, as if his words were meant for him. What he felt was wrong came from the two demons sealed in purgatory. This is obviously impossible. Of course he wasn't cheating. Without Zuyan, Luzaoki had lost her navigation system with its own GPS positioning function. She was a little confused as to how to get to the next floor. All traces of its existence in this copy were completely wiped out bit by Luzaoki using his supreme and sharp sword intent. There is obviously something wrong with this. When Mara was completely reduced to ashes, all traces were lost in this endless purgatory. Just saying that after Luzaoki killed one of the demons, the other demon knelt down and begged for mercy because he was afraid of death was very wrong. You must have accidentally exposed yourself. Another voice sounded quite irritable. What on earth do you want to do? A strange voice sounded from the direction Luzaoki was looking. The tone was high and low, and the tone was unpredictable and unpredictable. And the strength they showed in front of Luzaoki was too weak. But this is exactly what the devil did. In addition, other monsters are in the endless hell. Even if different levels require various methods to pass, among the many monsters Luzaoki has killed, only these two demons have been sealed separately. The appearance looked like Luzaoki had transformed into an invisible flame, while Emoluo was a paper tiger. After meeting Luzaoki's blazing fire, it ignited and the fire burned rapidly. However, he did not panic too much. Instead, he turned around and said calmly, "Come out, you have been following me for so long, you should talk about it." Luzaoki raised an eyebrow, "If you don't come out, I'm going to go crazy." If they were so weak, why were they sealed separately? Not to mention why these two demons were sealed. Oops, we seem to have been discovered. No matter how hard this paper tiger struggles, it will only increase Luzaoki's flame power. Not even as good as the first skeleton swordsman Luzaoki killed. Moreover, if you can die completely, it will definitely be a kind of relief for any living being in the endless hell. Whether it is Mara struggling to his death or wailing helplessly. The more Emoluo struggled, the more excited Luzaoki became. The methods are cruel and cannot bear to be looked at. Luzaoki kicked Zuyan, who was still sleeping on the ground, and carefully checked its condition. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 467. When the two demons appeared in front of Luzaoki again, he couldn't help but shrink his pupils. The poisonous hook of the scorpion monster, the soul flame of the soul grabber, the hateful hook. Almost everything on the guards at every level appears on them. Good guy. I'm really working hard in front to defeat monsters, and you sneak up behind me to pick up equipment, right? The soul is weak. Luzaoki's nose almost became angry. Oh my, that demon Buddha seems to have been completely beaten into powder. At this time, the demon who had knelt down to beg for mercy from Luzaoki shook his head with regret, as if he regretted not having the chance to pick up equipment. But another demon blew out a ball of fire from its nose and hummed, "What's the hurry?" As it spoke, it punched another eucalyptus tree, and the devil's claws exuding a strong aura directly penetrated the trunk of the tree. When it took out its hand again, there was a black stone in the palm. "Look, what is this?" The demon chuckled proudly. "Demon bone relics." Luzaoki could clearly see that the stone exuded pure and rich demonic energy, like a remnant of Emoluo. You can't just let them take this thing away easily. Not to mention that these two guys are most likely enemies rather than friends, and the purpose of taking this thing is not clear yet. Let's just say that this thing should strictly be Luzaoki's trophy. Luzaoki's name has already been engraved on it, so there is absolutely no reason for it to be taken by someone else. What kind of person is he, Lu? How can we tolerate the NTR behavior of you two little devils in front of your face? Luzaoki's eyes flashed, and the supreme sword intent burst out again, attacking the demon holding the demon bone relic. Sword comes out without self. Countless swords spurted out, mixed with sword intent that was hundreds of times more terrifying than before, and swarmed towards the demon, completely engulfing it almost instantly. Oh my! It's so scary. Another demon saw his companion being attacked, but he stood there indifferently, covering his mouth gently with his paws, looking surprised. After Jianlan passed, there was no trace of the demon again. The only thing left on the spot was the demon bone relic falling to the ground with a clack sound. Luzaoki made a move with one hand and used his magic power to directly roll the stone-like demon bone relic towards him. At the moment when the stone is about to be acquired, he suddenly felt extremely uneasy. My heart is tight. The sound of flesh and blood being pierced sounded twice. It hurts me so much when you hit me. The devil's violent voice with cruel meaning sounded in Luzaoki's ears. Luzioki slowly lowered his head, looking in disbelief at the devil's claw that completely penetrated his body. What is held in this ferocious claw is a bright red, beating heart. I'm so nervous. Can it not be tight? They are all held in someone's hand. As the demon grabbed his heart and pulled his arms out from behind his back, Luzioki's blood-stained body slowly fell. Ouch! Why did you kill him? Another demon came over with some complaints, picked up the demon bone relics on the ground, shook them in his hands, and lamented, "There are two super tough guys behind us. Without him paving the way for us, wouldn't we have to waste our precious time again?" Humph. What's so difficult about that? This demon that had just said heartbreaking words to Luzioki said dissatisfiedly, "If you can't fight it, don't take action, just leave it all to me." That's pretty much it? The demon turned from anger to joy, clapped his hands and said with a smile, "Then let's go." As he spoke, he actually summoned a beam of light, shrouding the two demons and teleporting away. Wait until the devil is gone. Luzioki slowly opened her eyes. Death without explanation. The effect is activated. He is resurrected again and is immune to this form of death. However, after merging some memories, his eyes gradually became fierce, his fangs protruded, and with a roar, he jumped up from the ground and entered a fighting state. Luzioki kicked Zuyan's ass. Even though Luzioki had already been super strengthened by Emoluo, he accidentally fell into the opponent's move. Then he said in a muffled voice, "Where is the demon Buddha?" Luzioki waved her hand, then rolled her eyes and said with a smile, "I can just say thank you. It's not all bad." It has mastered a skill similar to Luzioki's killing intent countermeasure. Perhaps hearing his call, Zuyan's eyelids moved while he was sleeping soundly, and then he opened his eyes blankly. So Luzioki just now was not so much killed instantly by the devil's claws as he was killed by the reflection of his own damage. In the future, if some unlucky bigon who has had his heart ripped out asks him whether a person can live without a heart, he can answer loudly, "Yes, of course." Luzioki rolled her eyes at him. "You and I are standing here fine, what do you think?" However, in this case, Zuyan could no longer lie on the ground. By the way, let's observe what the other party wants. And the priority level of this skill is obviously slightly higher than Luzioki's SS add 1, level killing intent countermeasure. It's still the same old rule, the next chapter will be later, the nightlife is too rich recently, I can't even code a bit, manual doghead. Because judging from Luzioki's current defense, even if he runs naked, he can't be shot through the chest so easily. Luzioki stood up and slowly touched her chest, which had completely recovered. There was still a trace of lingering fear on her face. It must have been taken down by someone like me, Lu. But when he saw Luzioki alone, who was frowning and covering her ears, he couldn't help but froze. That devil. Zuyan scratched his head, leaned down and looked at Luzioki gratefully. But sure enough, these two demons are not only powerful, but also quite weird. But what are you going to give me in return? Luzioki raised his eyelids, and a thick and long starlight fell from the sky, almost instantly healing the white monkey's soul that was about to be torn apart by the small world. He planned to imitate the previous behavior of these two demons, stay in the background, wait for them to fight to the death with the monsters guarding the level, and sneak along for the ride. Is it my turn now? The moment it activated its ability, Luzioki felt that she was completely locked by the opponent. Thanks. Moreover, this demon's arm seems to have a defense-breaking property that ignores defense. You saved me again. Luzioki's face immediately showed a wicked smile. It can only mean one thing, that is, the opponent has the means to ignore defense, so that he can easily penetrate his body. It can be seen from his dull eyes that at this moment, it still has not fully awakened from the small world before. Big monkey, get up quickly, don't lie on the ground and pretend to be dead. Global copy, My talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 468. Zuyan was speechless for a moment. Now he is penniless, and the only thing that can be considered a treasure is the stick given to him by Lu Zioqi. How should we repay Lu Zioqi's life-saving and revengeful kindness? How stupid! Lu Zioqi curled her lips. She was born in the year of the monkey, but the result was so stupid. Seeing that it didn't wake up, Lu Zioqi could only remind him, have you ever heard of a lifelong commitment for nothing in return, big monkey? Zuyan? Shocked. After doing this for a long time, you actually have such an intention towards me? Seeing its strange expression, Lu Zioqi quickly waved her hand and said, hey, don't get me wrong. I mean, otherwise, you can just follow me. Let me tell you, I never treat my brothers badly. Lu Zioqi started to talk to him about the welfare benefits of her subordinates with her fingers. You are responsible for food, housing, and distribution, pure land of bliss. You can also quickly improve your strength and enhance your own attributes. You have a special professional suit, holy clothes. Lu Zioqi opened her mouth and kept counting, but before he could finish speaking, Zuyan just looked at him steadily and agreed decisively. Good. Lu Zioqi, who had just entered the state, was choked to death. You agree now? Zuyan nodded. Lu Zioqi's face still had some unfinished meaning. I still have a lot of benefits that I haven't explained to you clearly. Zuyan. Well, since you agree, let's sign the contract. Lu Zioqi took out the contract that had been prepared from the parcel column and handed it to Zuyan. One person and one monkey happily decided on the master-slave relationship in this copy. It is worth mentioning that from the moment Zuyan became a member of Lu Zioqi's city, a powerful force emerged from his body. That's when the attribute bonus from the Pure Land of Paradise began to take effect on Zuyan. Its various numerical values have been greatly enhanced, and at the same time, several powerful bond attributes have begun to take effect. Bond, Raging Behemoth. 1. After entering the combat state, every time the battle continues for 1 minute, an additional 5% bonus to all attributes and a 10% recovery effect will be obtained. Bond, Ape Demon. 1. Every time your unit kills, it will gain 50% of the all-powerful blood-sucking power and gain 15s of invincibility. Lu Zioqi was stunned. It's time to show your cards, don't pretend anymore, right? How could anyone be so independent and bonded as soon as they came up? And in addition to these two independent bonds, Zuyan also has a fighter bond that increases his blood volume. After gathering 8 fighters, he will also increase his attack power according to his own blood volume. There is a ferocious beast bond, which the bond is very special. It is a special bond of 1, 4, 10, which means that it can only be triggered when there are 1, 4, and 10 units with the beast bond effect. The effect is to provide a large amount of damage reduction attributes, and to the attacks are attached with special effects. 1 is to reduce healing, 4 are to obtain additional attacks to reduce the opponent's attributes, 10 are to cause debuff to the enemy, and attack the enemy with debuff to cause real damage based on its own attack power. Overall, it seems to be a very strong bond with BT. It's a pity that because of Lu Zioqi's City Lord bond, as long as he is present, the beast bond will be at least 2, which will not activate the bond effect. Unless he can find 2 other ferocious beasts to create the effect of 4 ferocious beasts. But despite this, it is enough to prove how exaggerated Zuyan's strength is. You know, Lu Zioqi has proven through a lot of verification that the bond thing is actually related to the strength and potential of the unit. Zuyan's luxurious bond lineup is slightly inferior to Lu Zioqi's, even compared to the bond brought by the mythical talents of his sisters Lu Wanyi and Wang Yanran. What a wonderful feeling! Zuyan narrowed his eyes slightly and sighed intoxicatedly. Lu Zioqi waved her hand and said, okay, these attributes are permanent, and it won't be too late to study them slowly in the future. Now, you can lead the way. Big Big monkey. Stay back a little more, Zuyan continued. Lu Zioqi stepped back a few feet. But Lu Zioqi could also hear the stiffness in its tone, as if she was still not used to her current identity. The white-haired Lolita was still hunched over with her head down, writing and drawing on the ground. After moving for a while, she seemed a little unaccustomed to the animal skin she was wearing, so she stretched out her hand and pulled it again. However, the scene before him left him stunned once again. Lu Zioqi stopped, not knowing what it was up to, and could only look at Zuyan quietly. Lu Zioqi was a little unbelievable. Hearing Lu Zioqi's voice, the white-haired Lolita raised her head. When she saw Lu Zioqi, she narrowed her eyes. "Master. I'm so big, where's Zuyan?" Because this voice cannot be said to be completely different from Zuyan's muffled voice before, it can only be said to have nothing to do with it. It's not enough, I have to withdraw. Because what appeared in front of him was not the shrunken white monkey, but a cute little white-haired Lolita. Because the contract was signed, it was right for it to call Lu Zioqi its master. It's still further away. I'll call you soon. Until a crisp voice came from a distance, "Master, it's okay. Lu Zioqi." Then the next moment, a sky-high blood light emanated from Zuyan's body, rising from the ground, almost opening a big hole in the dark sky. Zuyan nodded, then looked at the surrounding environment, frowned, and said in a low voice, "Master, please step back." "All right." Seeing that Lu Zioqi didn't move, Zuyan urged again and again, "It's not enough, go further." He retreated until he could no longer see Zuyan's figure, and when he saw it turning into a dark mountain range from a distance, he heard its weak voice. "Unexpectedly, I finally sent it on time. Sure enough, people are forced to do it, doghead.jpg. Lu Zioqi was a little confused. Lu Zioqi had no choice but to do as he was told. But he didn't get close without Zuyan's permission. But in this shining bloody light, Zuyan's body did not increase but decreased, and began to shrink rapidly. So Lu Zioqi didn't care and just followed the instructions and retreated a few feet. Lu Zioqi. Lu Zioqi was stunned. Thinking about it, a big monkey who longed for freedom was abducted and raised by Lu Zioqi, so naturally he was a little uncomfortable. "What are you doing?" However, he did not hesitate. After receiving Zuyan's feedback, he quickly rushed back. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 469. It took Lu Zioqi a long time to accept this fact. His unparalleled warrior Zuyan turned into a little white-haired Lolita. In this case, it would be a bit inappropriate for him to call someone a big monkey again. He could only pinch his nose and call back Zuyan's real name, Zhangbai. Just looking at this name, Lu Zioqi couldn't associate it with this little loli with a clear voice and a soft body. Especially seeing her wrapped in an animal skin, struggling to carve a magic circle on the ground. Lu Zioqi is even more convinced of this. Of course, it's not that Lu Zioqi is so stingy that she won't dress the little Lolita. The main reason is that people don't want to. The animal skin was actually Zuyan's own fur. It was not only very comfortable, but also had super defensive capabilities and enhanced her perception. So she didn't want to shed it at all. After turning Bai into a human form, there is almost no trace of the previous beast form, only a flexible monkey tail and the slightly protruding small tiger teeth in the mouth are retained. But not only does this look not look ferocious, but it is also a bit cute, and it can inexplicably capture the eccentric quirks of some gentlemen. Ahem, of course Lu Zioqi is not that kind of person. Back to business. After carving out the magic circle, Zhangbai came to the foot of the eucalyptus tree, quickly jumped up to the branch of the eucalyptus tree, and took out a fruit from it. It seems that even in human form, she still retains the agility of a monkey. It is worth mentioning that the common eucalyptus tree has no fruits. Because this tree is a fern, it does not produce seeds. It reproduces through spores and is evergreen all year round. But now these two robes are obviously a little abnormal. Not only did the height exceed the limit value that ordinary turtles can achieve, but the color was also dry yellow and slightly black, which was almost impossible to measure with common sense. Therefore, Luzioki was not surprised at all when it bore fruit at the end of the treetop. Oh, actually this also has another meaning. It's probably what Buddhism refers to as cultivating the right fruit. But thinking about the demon Buddha who was beaten to death by Luzioki, this statement seems very ironic. Well, is it possible that this is not a fruit at all, but some kind of tumor? The truth is unknown, so Luzioki will just treat it as fruit. General Bai used the fruit of the eucalyptus tree to successfully activate the formation that had just been carved on the ground, and then shouted to Luzioki, "Master, stand up quickly. The formation will be activated soon." Luzioki followed the instructions and stepped into the formation that was gradually lighting up. The next moment, space and time were distorted. The surrounding scenes shattered. Luzioki and Zhangbai arrived at the next level of checkpoint. The checkpoints on this level have obviously been forcibly demolished. There are traces of the battle everywhere. You don't need to guess to know that it was those two demons who did it. Luzioki's expression moved slightly, and she leaned over and said something in Zhangbai's ear. Zhangbai looked a little confused, but finally nodded in agreement. Then the next moment, Luzioki squatted in front of her, jumped by lightly, straddled Luzioki's neck like riding a big horse, and gently held Luzioki's head with his hands. "Master, let's go." The white-haired little Loli's voice is always so full of energy. Hearing her call her master like this, Luzioki felt inexplicably ashamed and felt a little bit of relief. But for future considerations, Luzioki finally said seriously, "Zhangbai, don't call me master in the future." "Why?" The little white-haired Lolita was obviously a little confused. Her big clear eyes blinked and she looked at Luzioki in confusion. Luzioki did not explain. "Anyway, you can call me brother or boss." Zhangbai thought for a while, nodded readily and agreed, "Okay, brother." Luzioki nodded, and then activated his passive ability. He transformed into great freedom. The whole person, along with Zhangbai, disappeared into this world. In fact, before this, Luzioki really didn't have any invisibility skills. In the past, he only used the mirror flowers and water moon he studied to deceive the target's perception ability. But that's different now. He possesses his transformation of great freedom. This ability allows him to change in many ways, appear and disappear, and make him absolutely invincible. At the beginning, Luzioki was not able to master this ability skillfully and could not do it as he wished. But before he could stand it, he was imprisoned in a small world by Emoluo, and he practiced his passive abilities seriously and hard for decades. Thinking of this, Luzioki had to give brother Emoluo, who had turned into ashes, a thumbs up in her heart and give him a thumbs up. Luzioki now has complete control over her passive abilities. Using the Great Self-Transformation method, not only can he perfectly hide his own existence, but it can even cover the things he comes into contact with, such as Zhangbai, who is currently riding on his neck. Even before he was killed by two demons and fell to the ground pretending to be dead, he also used this ability to let the other party see only the scene they wanted to see, and successfully deceived these two guys with extremely strange abilities. And in this state, Luzioki is absolutely invincible. No attack can reach him. Of course, relatively speaking, he cannot interfere with anything in the outside world. At this time, he seems to be walking in the crack of the real world. He can clearly see everything in reality, but people in reality cannot see him in the crack. Shobai was obviously very curious about this state, constantly observing and sizing up the surrounding environment and things. Until Luzaoki reminded her, "We should go." Zhang woke up, said "Oh," and pointed in a direction with his small fingers. "Brother, let's go in this direction." Luzaoki nodded and began to stride forward. As he moved, the crack also began to move, always enveloping him and Zhang in it. Soon the two came to a place with extremely beautiful scenery. Here there are green shades, flowing water, and peach blossoms. But there was a dead silence all around, as if there were no living things, and it was filled with an indescribable feeling of coldness. Luzaoki's eyesight is beyond praise. He clearly saw a strange and extremely ominous force floating around. The source of these powers is a gap not far ahead. The tomb of the spiritual king. Zhang Bai's face was a little cautious, his eyes were fixed on the opening, and he slowly said, "Brother, let's go in." Luzaoki nodded and walked straight into the gap. Entering from the mouth, it is very narrow at first, and then it can reach people. After walking dozens of steps, I suddenly became enlightened. Once inside, the scene that unfolded made Luzaoki take a breath of cold air. In the meantime, all over the mountains and plains were paper figures made of white paper. These paper figures are extremely lifelike, with all the facial features and limbs, and their voices and appearance are almost the same as those of human beings. This has to give rise to an unspeakable sense of fear. The uncanny valley effect. But this is not the main reason why Luzaoki feels scared. But because, these paper figures are actually all tricks. The ominous power emanating from them is enough to drive their thinking and actions. But at this time, their state is a bit strange. It seemed to be restricted by some strange force, and it kept struggling and twisting in place. The next chapter will come to an end. This copy should end also. The next chapter may be delayed because people are outside. Global copy. My talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 470. It's the Evil Seal. Zhang Bai recognized at a glance what force suppressed these guys. "Brother, let's go quickly, this strength can't last long." Luzaoki was originally a little surprised as to why these two demons still had such power, but after hearing Zhang Bai's words, she nodded and strode through the group of paper figures, heading deeper. It's not that he's scared or anything, it's actually because... well, it's because he's afraid. Because he felt that if he had rash contact with these paper figures, something extremely troublesome might happen. This feeling, even through his ability to transform into the Great Freedom Dharma, was clearly conveyed to his heart. So Luzaoki decisively chose Kangxin. Under Zhang Bai's guidance, Luzaoki soon arrived at a very gorgeous palace. There is an offering table placed in this hall, and there is a box on top of the offering table. The box is wide open and the contents have been taken away. Needless to say, it must be those two demons who did it. There was also an open scroll of bamboo slips scattered on the altar table. It seemed that the two demons didn't care about this thing at all, leaving it alone on the altar table. Luzaoki's heart moved, but she cancelled the he transformed into a great freedom technique and used magic power to summon the bamboo slips into his hand. However, in order to handle it carefully, he did not touch the bamboo slip directly. Instead, he separated it with a layer of magic power to prevent it from being infected by the ominous aura. Naturally, the big characters above cannot be simplified Chinese. Fortunately, Luzaoki's eyes were strange, and he had the dual abilities of destroying illusions and insight, so he could understand these words that looked like ghost drawings without any hindrance. Seeing that he had put away his abilities, Zhang Bai knew it was time to take action, so he jumped down, walked to the side and started tinkering. Luzaoki, on the other hand, didn't know what was going on. When she saw it, she almost made her smile crooked. These two demons obviously miscalculated. They didn't take this treasure away. That's right. I guess I couldn't see what the words in it were about, so I naturally ignored them. Although Luzaoki didn't know what they took away, he could tell everyone responsibly that no matter what it was, it couldn't be compared to the bamboo slips in Luzaoki's hand. Because the content recorded above can be summed up in 4 words, yin weapon refining. Make it clear. Just to make that terrifying paper figure that even made Luzaoki shudder. A more important point. The method of operation is also recorded above. With it, Luzaoki can completely use the paper figures outside for his own use. This feeling is good. Give me a strange army out of thin air. This is it. Luzaoki could hardly close her mouth. Soon, Luzaoki, who had mastered the operating methods recorded in the bamboo slips, used his own magic power to successfully control these ownerless paper figures, and imprinted himself into the paper figures, although he did not achieve what he wanted with further refining. The same situation, but it also allows him to easily convey his wishes to these intelligent paper figures. This made Luzaoki feel particularly comfortable, and she also became more comfortable looking at these weird paper figures. It is worth mentioning that these paper figures are very scary. Luzaoki, who had read through the bamboo slips and controlled the paper figures, knew this very well. Their power does not lie in their strong fighting ability, but in their immortality. Once they are contaminated at all, they are like gangrene attached to the bones and cannot be eliminated at all. This is a powerful force that is almost equivalent to cause and effect. Once you are targeted by them, even if you escape to the ends of the world, they will follow you like a shadow. Moreover, they will absorb the power of the target to continuously supplement their own ominous power as the energy to drive their own actions. It can only be said that if Luzaoki didn't have the operating method recorded on the bamboo slips, he really couldn't afford to offend this thing. I don't know how those 2 demons got rid of them. The evil sealing seal mentioned by Zhongbai alone may not be enough to cut off this paper man. But what the hell, when she catches up with them, Luzaoki can release the paper figures and see with her own eyes how they do it. Hey hey hey. With the white-haired little loli leading the way, Luzaoki quickly passed this level. Next is the last level. It is said that if you pass this level, you can leave this place smoothly. As for Luzaoki, she was able to successfully clear the dungeon and save her adoptive parents. Thinking of this, even Luzaoki, whose expression remained unchanged despite the collapse of Mount Tai, couldn't help but feel a little excited. And these 2 demons are obviously also in this level. Why is Luzaoki so sure? Because as soon as he came in, he saw Chang Wei calling Lefu. Pooh. It's the boss beating the devil. How arrogant these 2 demons were in front of Luzaoki, and how embarrassed they were in front of the last level boss. Because what was in front of them was a serious mythical beast. I saw it with a dragon body and a human face, with long vertical eyes and a candle hanging from its mouth. Zujuyan! Luzaoki cried out. At this time, even if he was in the crack formed by his transformation of the Great Freedom Method, he couldn't help but tremble a little. Because just after he shouted Zujuyan, the thing obviously paused, and then glanced at him with its narrow eyes. This glance sent shivers down Luzaoki's spine, and she couldn't help but break into a hot sweat even in the middle of winter. Who is Zujuyan? It is also called Zilong and Zuyan. Legend has it that it is entrenched on Mount Buzhu and possesses extremely powerful power. When you open your eyes, you will see day, and when you close your eyes, you will see night. Could it be that I have traveled through time into the wilderness? Luzaoki's lips felt bitter. No, this book is obviously an urban fantasy series. How fat is this sudden flood of chaos? Luzaoki suddenly woke up. He realized something was wrong, because if the person in front of him was really a candle dragon, then there would be no need for him to fight, and it would be impossible to pass the level. Even though Zilong's deeds in mythology are not many, the fewer words it has, the less powerful it is, and how powerful it is. Moreover, no matter how rubbish it is still compared to those characters in the prehistoric times. and for little Karami like Luzioki. It only takes one breath to deal with people. Therefore, this thing definitely cannot be Zalong himself. Miscalculation, I originally wanted to end it with this one, but it looks like I have to wait a little longer.